All right, so everybody's done. So I'll take a look at what you said and then check in with you later as needed. So I'm noticing a little bit of lag on my end, so I think I'm just going to turn my video off for right now since we are going to do a few web-based activities. So what I'm going to do now is just go into the little PowerPoint we have for today's session, which will kind of go over what we're going to do. So you probably already know that we've started to talk now about instructions. So we're now looking at Unit 2, which has to do with miscellaneous reports. And so there are going to be several different types of reports that you will do in this class, the first of which will be an instructions report. So we'll just kind of focus first on what we did last time. So we had our little workbook review, introduction to data analysis. And so we will talk more about instruction reports during the session. You'll learn more about the Lego Masterpiece instructions team assignment, which everybody I think in the past has really enjoyed, especially kind of creating your own Lego object and having people try out the instructions and things like that. So next time we're going to have our first work day. So what you should do, we will make sure that everybody is signed up to be on a team by the end of class today, and then we'll finalize that arrangement by the end of the day so that way you know who you're working with and how that's going to proceed. So we want to prepare to complete your rough draft by 11 p.m. On February 1st. So on Monday, you'll be able to work in class to kind of put together your rough draft of the instructions. And so I'll kind of talk more about what's required for the rough draft as we talk about the assignment and things like that. So a little bit later, we'll talk about the assignment. And then you can expect to see a session preview of week 4 later this week. I'm expecting probably tomorrow that you'll have a preview and I'll have the checklist for week 4 put together by that time. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll begin with just a quick review of the study set about instructions, which focused on chapter 13, pages 227 to 231. So what I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm going to put a link to the Quizlet study set for instructions. And you can see that this is actually embedded in that PowerPoint that I'm showing you right now. So if you happen to have this week 3B PowerPoint slides up, you can just kind of quickly copy and paste the link into your browser. So you get a chance to kind of look at the study set again. And there's also a study guide, and I'll kind of point you toward that as you start thinking about, the main pieces of information, especially like the strategies and the different concepts and terms for instructions are going to be useful to you for the Quiz Is homework game. So you may have realized now that we usually play Quizlet Live just to kind of give you a chance to connect the information in your head a little bit better, to kind of study it. As some of you said in our class before this, so probably like week 2B, several of you said, I think it was helpful, like the Quizlet Live review is helpful, but I think I need to study the terms a little bit more. So I'm hoping we'll have some time to actually play some more rounds of Quizlet Live to focus mainly on this study set about instructions. So what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to minimize this PowerPoint and go over to Quizlet Live, and we'll play a couple rounds of that and see how you do. And then after class, once I kind of go through the assignment and talk about that, I'll show you where to find the Quizlet's homework game, which will kind of make sure to solidify that understanding. So like the Quizlet Live, I think, is almost like a study session rather than a formal assessment of what you learned, if that makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to come back to this PowerPoint because, again, I'll talk about the assignment description and then requirements for the Lego Masterpiece. So here we go. I'm going to get this Quizlet Live started. So in a moment, you'll be able to see the code and link for the Quizlet Live game on the screen. Okay. And let's see. Okay. Since Ariana is logging in from home, this will be interesting. We'll have to see how this goes. So we will do random teams, but then again, since you're able to communicate with Ariana via the chat, that might be the best way to go about it. We'll just kind of see how it goes. We'll feel it out. And so what you'll do is you'll be able to see the term and definition. So the term will come first, or the question, and then you'll have the different answer choices. All right. So you want to go to Quizlet.live and enter that code. So right now I believe we have 22 people. I'm going to turn the music off for a moment, just so that way everybody's good to go. Okay. So I'm going to put the link there in the chat. You'll be able to see it as you're playing in the game, so in case you get disconnected, you'll be able to come back to that. So we're looking for, I believe, 22 at this point. Let me just double check. I know Kylie said she was coming in a little bit later, but I just want to make sure I haven't slipped over her if she's here. Okay, it doesn't look like she's here right now. So we're looking for 22 total folks in the game. Okay, almost everybody is in there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create the game. We'll see. Again, I'm just going to do random teams just to make it easier. And so you should be able to see now who is on your team. I'm just going to give you like a quick second to take a look at that so that way everybody's clear. Okay, so let me look. So Josie and Lucy, you're going to have to communicate with Ariana via the chat as far as which answers are which. Who has which answers. So I think we're just go ahead and get started then. Like I said, I think we're going to have time for hopefully 4 rounds just so that we have enough time to kind of see everything at least once. So, as I said before, y'all are going to have to communicate to figure out who has the correct answer choice for each question. You are going to see the same question among your team, and you'll have to decide who has the correct answer.
What is it? Short and logically.
Hey, it's
It's separate.
separate. Okay.
Separate.
Caution and
Caution. It's need and not.
yeah, I don't have it.
Assembly guide.
User manual.
Nope.
Shortly and logical. It's user manual.
User manual.
Logical. Never mind.
Thanks.
Either. Transition and sequence.
Josie. I mean Lucy.
It's arranged in numbers. Assembly guide.
Directly.
You have it, Delilah? No. What was it? Short and logical. Transitions and sequence.
Short and logical.
I have it scripted. I got it.
All right, it looks like Lions are in the lead right now, but we do have a couple other teams coming up in second and third, so we'll see.
That's overview. I got overview.
Arranged and numbered. Okay.
Directly. Oh, this is the last one.
Okay, so I think what you're going to do is kind of quickly look at your stats, see if there's anything that we need to quickly review, and then we're going to play through it again. So hopefully if we review the stats now, it'll kind of prepare you for the next round. Let's see how we did. Okay. All right, so what we learned: complete the strategy statement, use short and logically shaped sentences, So then you can see how with the other choice you might have confused it with the words need and not don't really fit there. All right, so let's go on. Okay, so user manuals in the most comprehensive instructional format. So you won't create a user manual. You're actually going to create an assembly guide. That is the closest to the description of the assignment. Let's see. If a single step covers two related actions, describe these actions in their required sequence. So with this, it wasn't only just the words, but also the capitalization that kind of clued you in to maybe which answer choice was correct. So here we see with the one you confused it with, complete the strategy statement, arrange all steps in a numbered list. All right, let's go on. And we talked about this. Let's see if there's anything new. All right, looks like most everything is the same. Okay, we'll play this again and see how you do in the next round. We'll keep the same teams for now since we only just played one round. But if we do have the same winner again, we'll likely shuffle teams. So go ahead and get started. Oh, so I think, Kaden, you might want to refresh the page.
1 second.
Sure. Just hang out here for a moment.
It was. I was on Facebook and it was really
Hi. Wait, can you hear me on my computer?
Okay, everybody's ready to go. Let's do it.
Sorry, it locked me
Visual and redundant.
Okay, you want to do Madeline?
Visual and redundant.
It's usability, the pilot, if you have it.
Oh, usability. No, Madeline does not have that. I clicked the wrong one. I'm sorry. I was thinking it was a Madeline screen.
You're good.
Task caution.
Parallel.
Affirmative. No, it's affirmative. Yes, it
It's
is.
simple and negative.
I'll give you a guideline step.
Delilah, simple and negative.
Negative. Okay, sorry.
Angela,
Happening.
usability.
Instructions.
Sorry.
I got it.
I'm gonna ruin everybody's team. I don't know. Simple and navigating.
Okay. Looks like we have a close race so far.
I got it.
To see how this turns out.
Even place. Informative. Even place.
Informative.
Parallel or no affirmative.
Team.
You're fast. Control
I'm
rerun.
sorry, I love you. Okay.
I'm talking to y'all now.
My computer fathomed.
Listen, I don't know who's talking.
Instructions.
Okay, leave them put.
I got it.
I'm late.
I got it.
I'm out.
I'm out. Simple and negative.
I can hear you. Sounds so funny.
Caution.
Second. Call.
Okay. So we'll look at your stats for this round, and I think we are going to switch teams up a little bit. And since Kylie is here, we're going to add her. But for right now, we'll just go over your statistics and just see if there's anything we need to look over again. Let's see. Okay, so we probably saw some different terms and questions than we saw in the last round. Okay, so first term or question. You should provide visuals to enhance the usability of your instructions. In other words, they should illustrate steps that are difficult to mentally visualize or offer a big picture in one glance. So usability has to do with how readily someone can follow your instructions. Whether just, again, the way you're using words should help them to understand what they're supposed to do. Okay. So the strategy statement, you can might have confused that with, was use affirmative phrasing. So that's positive language. So again, stating things like place things to the right instead of don't place it to the left. So that's what affirmative means, is positive language. Okay, let's look at what else. Okay, so we want to use informative headings that tell us exactly what is in each section. And then again, that's affirmative phrasing is positive. Let's see if there's anything new. Okay. All right, so there's something new here. Use parallel phrasing, so repeating grammatical forms. So if parallel structure, it means that each grammatical form is the same. And then again, informative is something that gives us clear, detailed descriptions of what to expect. Okay, so we're going to play again, and let me see. I think there's a way to add people, so let me try that. Okay, we're gonna add more players. Since Kylie is here, you'll want to go to Quizlet.live and then enter the code 310554. So we'll just hang out here for a little bit. And we'll put that link in the chat just for quick reference. So now we should have 23. This will be interesting. We're going to have different number of people on different teams. All right, so for those who are already ready to go with the game, you can take a moment just to look over the study set again. You might even take a look at the study guide, see if there's anything you might have missed. All right, so Kylie, let me know if you're having any trouble logging into the Quizlet Live game. And I think we'll just make sure.
It's a nice sweater.
Oh, I see. All right, so let me think. All right, so wait, is Kylie not there in the lab? Is she logging from home? I just want to confirm that.
She's not in here at lab. I think she's in lab.
Oh, she's at home. Okay. Okay. So I think, all right, so we're just going to try and see if we can figure this out, what's going on. Should just send me an email. Okay. Oh, goodness.
He's like, firmly grabbed her on naked. Okay. No.
Okay. We're just trying to figure this out. You're logging in from home. Okay. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I think for right now, I'm just trying to make sure that we're addressing the issue with Kylie. So I think for right now, once she figures out the audio issue, we are going to tag her in. But I think for right now, since everybody is ready to go, otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get started again. I think we're just going to end up going into different teams. Okay, so we'll go ahead and everybody's there. We're just going to update the game again. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so you're going to be in different teams now. Okay, so everybody should know who is on their team. And so we're going to go ahead and just play another round, and then hopefully in a few minutes we'll be able to allow Kylie to participate with us. We're just going to make sure that she's able to hear everything first.
Got it.
Alright.
I got that one, boy.
It's 10 and 7. Oh, it's warnings.
Oh my god, every time I type it in.
No, I don't have it.
Connected.
Injuries and misuse.
Connected.
I got it.
Click the button.
General. Caution.
Warning.
Is it not warning?
No, I don't have it.
Hold on. Yeah, it's yeah.
Caution. Injuries, visuals.
What did you do?
Audience, purpose, environment.
What are you talking about? I don't have it either.
I got it.
Thank you, sir.
Ooh, we've got 4 teams with 9, and we'll say, oh gosh, we've got a couple teams with 10. Correct.
Procedure.
Oh goodness, we got a close race here. All right, let's see if there's anything we should review. Sometimes it'll show us what we learned. Okay, so we've got a 1, 2, 3 question. Excellent. Okay, so Kylie can hear us. So right now we're going to go over the stats quickly. It looks like there might be possibly 2 questions we need to look at, but for right now we'll focus on the first set. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. So that means we have to make sure that each of the words fits with the blanks. So first question, readers across the globe might use your instructions. Therefore, write in a straightforward style with plenty of visuals and remain sensitive to cultural differences. So again, we see that with the second question, the words that go in the blank make more sense for that question. You should also insert notes, cautions, dangers, and visuals as needed. So we could see how, if we look at number 1, for example, the word cautions, the caution style doesn't really work. So for each of those questions, you'll want to just make sure that each of the words fits with the blanks. Let's see if there's anything else we need to know. Okay, we're going to play again. We're just going to add Kylie in so that way she can participate. So we're going to go back. All right, good deal. So we are going to have different teams now. Okay, so take note of who you're working with. And so the people on Kylie's team, we've got Joe, Joseph, Kaylee, and Mary. So the 3 of you will probably need to communicate with Kylie via the chat. So that's probably the easiest way to go about it. And so again, for chameleons, we've got Ariana, Isabella, Allie, and Alexander. So the 4 of you are probably going to also have to use the chat. You saw audio can work sometimes, but it's hard to tell who's speaking and who's communicating with whom. So let's go ahead and see how that works. We'll start.
I don't have it. No, I don't have it either.
General. It's a range number.
Yeah, I don't have general. It has general.
It's a different parallel.
Yeah, it's probably parallel. Purpose and environment.
A range and number. A range.
I don't have it.
Never mind.
It's parallel. Affirmative.
No, I don't have it.
Affirmative. Yeah, I got audience purpose. Yeah, I got one. Physical.
Looks like another close race here.
Visible.
Nope, not me either. Thank you.
Summarize, describe. Arrange the number. Yeah, it's affirmative.
Assembly guide.
Yeah, audience purpose.
Visible.
Me. I got it.
Audience
Hence of parallel. Procedures.
No, I don't have it.
Oh no.
Oh my God, I'm so dumb.
Okay, so we're going to do one last review of your statistics, and then we're going to start talking about Lego Masterpiece instructions, team assignment. So let's take a look at this. Okay, so I think we just need to make sure we understand the difference between affirmative. So again, something that's affirmative is positive. You might have heard, I was going to say, you might have heard this word. It's like, somebody responds affirmative, like that's correct, it's positive, right? And then parallel phrasing has to do with grammar. So parallel has to do with grammatical forms. So if you use a verb with ing and you're using different phrases that have ing in them, you want to make sure that's consistent. So if you use ing with a verb like if I went swimming, diving, and fishing, right?
What?
You want to use the same grammatical forms in different phrasing. So that's what parallel goes with. Parallel phrasing goes with repeating grammatical forms. Positive language has to do with affirmative phrasing. Okay, so we have a 1-2 question. So with this, again, we want to make sure that we have each of those words fits with the different blanks. So assembly guides can be a subsection of a larger user manual, or can be a separate standalone document. So you see how those two words fit in both of those blanks. So legal liability, this is very critical, especially if you think about the way that instructions are used. Legal liability, at least one type of legal liability, is failure to warn against hazards from proper use of a product. For example, the risk of cutting one's fingers on a new type of vegetable slicer. Okay, so you can see how those two words, warn and hazards, fit in that question or sentence. So we can see if we put those words into the first question, they don't really work. Assembly guides can be a warn or a larger user manual, so you can see how it doesn't fit. Okay, move on. Let's see if there's anything that's new. Okay. We now know we want to make sure we define the differences between affirmative and parallel phrasing. So that's something that's going to come up. Okay. So let's go now to go back to the PowerPoint, which I'm going to do again, just kind of show you some more information about the Lego Masterpiece Instructions team assignment. And then after that, we'll just kind of go over to the sign-up sheet and make sure everybody is set with who they want to work with for the assignment. Okay. So we'll minimize the Chrome tab for now, and we'll come back to that. Okay. So there was something that I was going to do with you, and I've done this in the past when I've been physically present in the lab. But since that's going to be kind of difficult, we're going to skip this. But if you'd like to try that for additional credit, you can certainly send me your responses to this. Essentially, what I've done in the past is we use IKEA assembly instructions to kind of give you practice with composing instructions to pair with visuals. So, you know, if you bought things from IKEA, you've seen that the assembly guides are mostly pictures, right? So I use this Fado or Fado, I don't know how it's pronounced, table lamp assembly guide because it's really short. There's only a few steps. You can see the important safety instructions, caution, warnings. So you can see how that's kind of put in the context of what we just talked about. And then we go in here, we can see, all right, there are 2 steps, okay? And we see that they're kind of described here just in wordless form. So the trick is to, when you look at that assembly guide and try to write instructions for that, there's a really great video that I found that's actually a review, but there's a demonstration of this person putting the lamp together. And unfortunately, I cannot play this with the way that WebEx works. It doesn't allow me to share sound from my side. The only way I could make that work is if I were to be there in the lab and just play it off of the PowerPoint there. So just for the sake of logistics, I'm not going to spend time doing that as much as I think it's beneficial for you. So if you'd like to try this, you can send me just a brief set of instructions to supplement the visuals for steps 1 to 2. You can compare this with somebody else in the class and then share that with me. And I'll give you a little bit of extra credit for that if you want to try that. Okay, so without any other further ado, we'll look at the LEGO Masterpiece Instructions Team Assignment. So as you saw, being able to create documents detailing procedures and instructions that use a readable style and accessible design can serve various purposes of audience. So it's important to recognize that procedures and instructions must also be tested for usability and practicality, which is essential in crafting such documents. So essentially, we'll go over to the sign-up sheet, but we can see here in the assignment sheet I've noted you'll be working groups of 3. That may not always be the case. And so I want to note now that since we have 25 students enrolled in this class, we're going to have some different construction or configurations for teams. So some of you will be working in groups of 3, a few of you will be working in groups of 2, and then there's an opportunity for 2 individuals to work just on their own for this. But if you're working individually, you can certainly work with the other individual person, just kind of bounce ideas off of them and things like that, okay? So as a team, or again, if you're working individually, you will write a set of instructions for a LEGO masterpiece. So you'll have to think about a specific object that you can build, and I'll talk a little bit more about the minimum requirements for this. You're going to submit a rough draft at the end of class on February 1st, and I'll kind of guide you through that. And then on February 3rd, when you come into class, you'll be trading instructions with another team, and you'll give them comments about their instructions. So when you trade assignments with another team, they're going to put your masterpiece together. If that team can successfully follow your instructions, you can, again, maybe you want to add pictures, change things up a little bit, and then you would submit your final draft to assignments. If that team encounters any problems in recreating your masterpiece, they are going to post a comment to explain the problem or problems. Regardless if they have problems, you'll want to, again, just add a comment to give them feedback about their instructions. So they may not always be able to have problems putting your piece together. Maybe there was something as far as pictures might help, or maybe if you put the pictures in a different place or something like that, just some feedback to help them improve their instructions would be good. So on February 3rd, you're going to have time as a team to revise your instructions and submit them by that deadline. So, and again, you're responsible for communicating with the other team regarding the usability of their instructions. So how well can you understand what that you need to do? How well can you grasp the information in the document and put it to good use, right? And their document's design. Okay, so next we have the minimum requirements. You have to create a complex masterpiece, something that can be built in a minimum of 10 steps. So with this, you can use your own Lego set or sets. There's also a program called Lego Digital Designer. And so if you have a Windows or Mac computer, you can download that and use that. But if you have a Chromebook, or again, if you're using the computers in the lab, the Lego Digital Designer will always work. So what you'll need to do there's a program called Mechabricks. So actually, I've got a couple of quick start guides that I'm going to draw your attention to. So there's a tutorial about how to use Lego Digital Designer. And you can see I'm in the section of our Brightspace that talks about instructions reports. So we're in Unit 2. And I've broken learning materials into the various types of reports that you will write for this unit. And we're starting with instructions reports. So there is a YouTube tutorial for Lego Digital Designer, how to use that. And then there's also a quick guide to how to use Mechabricks. This is less than 6 minutes. So there's actually a web-based application. So you can actually open it in your web browser and build within that. So as a team, you'll want to think about what type of masterpiece you'll want to build. I'm going to show you Mechabricks quickly since I have it open in here. So actually, this is really kind of cool because you have different options for brick styles, and you're not limited to a physical space for the build. So I'm just going to briefly show you this. Okay. So you can see different models that people have built, but then you can also actually go in here. There's a quick start guide in text, but I actually like the YouTube video because you can actually see the instructions in action, or at least see the steps in action. But you can see how you've got a space to build, but then you have any type of pieces that you want to use. So any size or type of pieces that you want to use. You have different colors, different ways you can transform the objects. So this is a pretty good application. That way you're not limited to a specific set or sets that you would use to physically put the Legos together. Okay. So just want to mention that this is probably what you're going to use when you test out the other team's instructions on February 3rd. So I'll remind you of that once we get started with the trading part of this. Okay. So again, you have to have a complex masterpiece, something you can build on a minimum of 10 steps. You can, again, use your own Lego set or sets for this if you prefer that. So if you plan to use your own Lego sets or sets, you'll want to bring those with you to school. But again, it might be easier just to use Mechabricks because you don't have to worry about bringing things back and forth. So the other minimum requirements are, you have to create a name for your masterpiece. You'll follow the guidelines and strategies for effective page design, which we talked about a little bit in the Quiz Study Set. You'll see those represented in the quizzes homeworking for that section of Chapter 13. You'll also want to follow the guidelines and strategies for writing instructions, several which we talked about today. So you'll want to review that section of Chapter 13, the study guide, and then the quizzes homeworking will test your understanding of those guidelines and strategies. You may include pictures. So in the past, when people have brought in their own Lego sets, they are able to take pictures of each stage of the build or the final build, something like that. With Mechabricks, you could take screenshots. Lego Digital Designer should also allow you to do that, so that way you can see each stage of the build. Okay. You'll want to use one of the recommended templates in the textbooks. There is one template on page 238. There is another template on pages 240 to 241. So you want to choose one. You don't want to combine elements of both. Just pick one and stick with it. Your instructions must include a title, such as the name of the masterpiece, and an introduction. So the introduction is going to preview what the build should do, and you're going to want to hook your reader's attention, get them interested in building your object. Okay, so something else to keep in mind as you are building your masterpiece and writing your instructions. You will need to keep meeting minutes. So this is kind of similar to what we did with our major paper assignment for the progress log or the group work log. But there's a little bit of a different way of creating those meeting minutes. So I've included some examples of not only the finished Lego Masterpiece instructions from a few different teams, but also their finished meeting minutes. And so that way you can see some examples of what you'll want to do, how you want to format and structure, and what levels of detail to include with your meeting minutes. Okay, so Chapter 15, pages 271 to 273, contains specific guidelines and strategies for writing meeting minutes. So you want to refer to that as you are composing those. You'll want to be sure to include all your team members' names in the instructions and meeting minutes. Okay. So again, I want to emphasize that you're going to write a rough draft and a final draft. Not all the reports you write in this class will require a rough draft. So you want to make sure that the rough draft goes into discussions, and I'll point you toward that during class on Monday, where you'll want to post one copy of your rough draft by 11 p.m. on February 1st. And then once we have everyone submit their work for the rough draft, we'll be able to create trading assignments. So once we post the trading assignments, you'll be able to decide, or again, you won't need to decide. You'll be able to see the other team's instructions, try to put their masterpiece together, and then review their instructions by the end of class on February 3rd. So after that, you'll want to submit the final draft of your instructions by 11 p.m. on February 3rd. So if you get comments by the end of class, you'll have some time to think about how to make alterations to your instructions and then submit the final draft and meeting minutes. So the meeting minutes will be placed in a separate folder from the instructions, and I will show you exactly which folders you'll want to submit each of those different documents to. Okay. At this point, I just want to see if there are any questions about this assignment. All right, looks like there's a question in the chat. You do not have to use your own Legos. Yes, people enjoy this a lot. So, you know, in the past, and this is unfortunate that we're not in person, because I do have access to a large set of different sizes and colors of pieces. But then actually there's a benefit to having the Mecha Bricks and Lego Digital Designer, because you are not limited to a physical set that you already have, right? So if you don't have your own Lego or Lego sets, then you can use Lego Digital Designer or Mecha Bricks. Again, if you're not able to download Lego Digital Designer to your laptop or computer at home, you can use Mecha Bricks. That way you can make sure that you know, you're not limited to a specific set or sets that you have. Yes, so basically, if you're putting the set together, you're going to need Mecha Bricks. If you want to bring your own set to school and have that for someone else to use, and then also for you to use as you're creating your masterpiece, that's fine. But then again, you are responsible for that. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're getting, you know, all the pieces that you need, bringing them with you to school, and then taking them back with you. So if you're not sure you can handle that, or if you prefer to use Mecha Bricks or Lego Digital Designer, that's fine. Okay, so yes, you have to track your time as you're completing tasks. I think what I'm going to do is just kind of briefly show you some examples of the meeting minutes, just so you get an idea of what you'll want to track as you're putting the stuff together. Okay, so you can see the examples of the final instructions, and then the meeting minutes. I'm just going to show you at least one example, and then I'll show you the other one if that's still not clear. Okay, so these are kind of brief, right? So really just have you put the date for each time that you meet. So then again, this was, you can see when this took place in the fall of 2019, and then they had a list of members present, and then the agenda. So what you did first, second, third, and fourth. So you can see here I've kind of removed names for student privacy, but then you get the general idea. You write down when you met and exactly, again, what you did roughly, with time frames and stuff like that, designing, instructing their project. Then, one person spent 30 minutes creating the step-by-step instructions, and then another person took pictures of each step in the materials, and then, at the end, they reviewed, submit the rough draft later that day. Okay, so that was day one. And then day two, you can see they had more description of what took place for the trading day. All right. I'm going to show you just another example. This one was fairly good. I also included grading rubrics for each of these so you can see how your work will be evaluated. So you'll notice that the rubrics I used at that time were different from the scoring rubric that we will use this semester. But the criteria is generally the same. We'll still focus on the same types of aspects like content and organization and things like that. So I think for the meeting minutes, I said something like, okay, you've got clear, detailed evidence of each group's contributions, something like that. I think I did say you could have described some steps in more detail, like what details were added, which formatting changes were made. But then with that, I have a second example that has a lot more detail. So I'm going to show you that just really quickly. Okay. So you can see there's the example two. They actually used, I'm just going to show you this quickly because you may want to see how this is possible in Layer Digital Designer. They actually created visuals to show each building step as they placed their different assembly instructions there. So let me show you the meeting minutes now. Okay. So I think this was probably one of the most detailed meeting minutes pieces that I saw. And this is a group of 3. So I think this helped because we could see, that there are 2 main people perhaps that were involved. Although they did involve the third person a bit. They just had one person in particular who was responsible for composing the meeting minutes and things like that. But you can see how they broke up the labor among each of those. So I think this is, like I said, they really kind of broke down each of those different steps into sub-steps. So they showed, the first order of business was to review this assembly instructions, and then they described how they did that. Each member took turns. The team took time to pause whenever a member had a recommendation to improve the instructions or found a feature they liked, things like that. So you can see how this is pretty detailed and describes all the different steps they took for each stage of the project. So if you're wondering where to find these things, there's a few places. I actually put the link to the learning materials about instructions reports in the week 3 checklist. And I'll kind of, go over that once everybody's clear on what the assignment requires, just so that way you know where to find different pieces of information and different examples. But I just want to see if there are any other questions about the project, about the instructions or meeting minutes. I'm going to go back to the assignment description for a moment, just so that we can refer to that.
Got it.
Okay, any other questions? So I'm going to wait just a moment, and then if there aren't any other questions, I do want to show you where to find the team sign-up sheet, and then just point out some other things that are in the checklist, like where to find the different examples I showed you, the other materials related to instructions. And then again, I mentioned a little while ago that there's a quizzes homework game that focuses on the major terms and concepts that are essential for connecting to this assignment and then the textbook reading. So I'll show you those things, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing any questions that you might have at this point. All right, so some of you may still be thinking or typing out a question, which is fine. So if you still have questions, please do put those in the chat. You can also raise your hand in WebEx to let me know if you have a question. But I think I am going to move on to the other aspects of, yes. So let me show you where you can find the slideshow. Yes. So I actually have this in the same place that I have the examples that I just showed you. So you can see in the breadcrumb trail that I have moved into the course topics by unit section. We're looking at unit 2, which we started today. And I've broken up the learning materials and learning activities based on those different miscellaneous reports that I mentioned earlier. So when you look in learning materials, you'll see there's a section that deals with instructions report. That folder appears first since we are talking about it first in the unit. And so I've got the slideshow here. Let me look. So I've got the checklist actually here too. Mapped to lecture capture for all of our recordings and stuff, course textbook, the readings that were assigned. So if you couldn't access the course textbook for any reason, I've got the PDF scan of that. And then the presentation that I showed you, or I'm showing you right now, is actually here. So I'm going to go in the checklist in a minute just to show you where you can locate this stuff, but it's all here, including the assembly guide I show you and then the demo clip that I mentioned before. So if you want to try that out, just to give yourself a little bit of practice with writing instructions to go with visuals, you can try that out and send that to me for a little bit of participation credit if you so choose. Now, you can see in here, I also have the team assignment sheet, which is kind of embedded in the presentation. I just took some screenshots of the assignment sheet. And then I have the grading rubric, which I'll talk more about when we get further along in the unit. So like for week 4 B, I think we'll talk about the rubric. But you can take a look at that and just see how your work will be evaluated for that. But then again, I've got the Lego Digital Designer tutorial, the quick guide for Mechabricks, and then all the different examples. And then I have some resources for the writing process and collaborative writing. So most of you are familiar with this. Kylie is probably not. So some of these things you've already seen before. I think most everybody has seen these things before. So if you want to remind yourself some different strategies for collaborative writing, writing in groups, and then again, we've got a quick study guide for English composition and style, grammar and punctuation, grammar and writing. So those types of things like composition and style, grammar and punctuation, writing are really useful for the revision and editing process. But for the rough draft, you'll just want to make sure that everybody is aware of their different roles and responsibilities for the project. So there are some different strategies and handouts for that. All right. So I am going to go over the checklist now, just to show you again what you'll want to look at as we move into the weekend. So I mentioned before that I've got a homework game for you to try out, just so again, you're kind of solidifying your understanding what we did in the Quizlet Live review. So I've got that in a few places. You can see if I'm in learning materials, I've got the week 3 checklist there. I've also got it in the learning materials folder just for instructions reports. So if we go in that checklist, and you can access this too if you go into course materials and select checklist and look at week 3. But there's all the learning materials that I mentioned earlier. The instructions reports folder link is in there. So that way you know, okay, I can find all the materials that we talked about today in that folder. Okay. So then, all right, we did this. This was something that you wanted to do for week 3A. So we've already done this. And so what we'll look at now is you'll want to add your name to the Lego Masterpiece team sign-up sheet. I know several of you have done this already. But what I'm going to do in the chat is just put a direct link to that item in the checklist. So this is a Google sheet, and it's going to just break down what formation of groups we can have, okay? So I'll talk about that in just a minute. Then I also wanted to draw your attention to the last item on the checklist that deals with learning activities. So the Quizzes homework game for chapter 13. Most of everything that you saw today in the Quizlet Live review is going to appear in this homework game. But then again, if you want to make sure you understand which terms and concepts will appear in that homework game, there are some different ways to check out that information. So you just click on the link in the checklist. You're going to be taken directly to the Learning Activities folder for Unit 2. And again, I've kind of broken up the Learning Activities folder into the different reports that you'll write for Unit 2. So in the description, I've got the link to the textbook, the PDF scan I mentioned before, the study guide, which has all the terms and concepts that will appear in the homework game, and then the study set. So like I mentioned last time, that we had a Quizlet Live review, if you're looking at the study set and referencing the study guide, the best way to make sure that you review those terms and concepts that are most essential for doing well in the homework game, you can look in the study set and you can mark with stars things that appear in the study guide. So I actually did this, but because you don't see what I mark with a star, you'll have to do that manually yourself, right? So there's a way to do that, all right? So I'm just going to go to all just to show you what happens, okay? So if you're looking at all the terms in that set, some of them may not have stars with them. If you mark things with stars already, that's going to show up when you click on starred items. But then again, if you haven't, you're just going to see all the terms and concepts. So if you see that there's something there, like, okay, let's see, I'm looking at that question and I can see that that's represented in the study guide, you'll put a star next to it. So that way you can kind of filter it by the things you are most, again, most essential for you to understand in order to do well with the instructions report for like a masterpiece instructions team assignment. Okay. So all the information for that homework game is there in the description. I'm going to go back just for a moment. So again, you can be able to click on the link to go into it. But then again, if that doesn't work, I've included the alternative instructions with the code. And this game will end on Sunday at 11 p.m. So you have some time to try this out. Again, this is also set up to allow unlimited attempts. You should be able to see, the answers for questions after you put in a response, and then it'll show you the answer within the game. It'll also allow you to attempt a few of the questions you missed. Again, those are redemption questions. So if you have questions about your results or you have any issues with playing that homework game, just let me know, send me an email. And then again, when I preview what we're going to do in class on Monday, I'll kind of remind you of the deadline for this. So again, you have until Sunday to get that done. But then again, all the resources that we went over should help you, especially the live review probably gave you a clue as far as what you might want to take another closer look at. Okay, so without that, I'm going to go back into the sign-up sheet now. Since I talked about the homework game, I just want to make sure I covered that. So let's look at the sign-up sheet. So I do want to mention a few things with this. Okay. So we do have 25 students still enrolled in this class. So we do want to make sure we're including everybody in the group arrangements. Okay. So I believe we have, I did this because there are 25 people and we want to have an even number of trading assignments. I wouldn't want to give somebody two different masterpieces to build in one period. We want to maybe focus on one set of instructions during the trading period. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that we have 7 teams of 3, 1 team of 2, and then 2 individuals. Okay. So regardless of how this ends up, we want to make sure that we have that number, 7 teams of 3, 1 team of 2, and 2 individuals. And so we won't need to necessarily keep the same teams for the qualitative data analysis project report and presentation. So we're just trying this out, the configuration for just this assignment, and then you'll have another opportunity to sign up for teams for the qualitative data analysis project report and presentation, but that won't happen for a few more weeks. So with the time we have left, we'll just want to make sure, again, I know that there are a few people who aren't here today, so we do still want to make sure that those people are included in lists since everybody's still enrolled in the course and things like that. We just want to make sure we include everybody. So if you haven't put your name down yet, you want to see if there's a team perhaps of 2 that you can add your name to, or again, if you would just prefer to work on your own for that, that's fine. The reason that I have it set up this way is because the last time we had 1 team of 4, it did not go well. So, unfortunately, we're just going to have this configuration so that way we don't have this issue. You can see how maybe with a team of 4, it's a little bit harder to figure out who would be responsible for what and dividing that responsibility up equally. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to make sure you have your name on there. And then what I'll do is at the end of the day, I'll just kind of post the finalized list of people on the teams. And so what we'll do, and going into week 4, is you're going to be sitting with your team for each of the days we have to work together for week 4, which is the only times we'll be working on the Lego Masterpiece instructions team assignment during class. So you may find it necessary to meet outside of class just to figure out what you're going to build and how to create your instructions. And so what I'd recommend again is, I know you all keep in contact with each other. We have a group chat and things like that. So continue to use those tools to communicate with each other. And then, so I'm going to leave this up for a few minutes. And then at the end of class, we're just going to do a 1-minute chat since we have a little bit of time left over in the session, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with what we talked about today in the Quizlet Live review and things like that. And then if you have questions, that's probably a good, or areas of confusion, excuse me, that's a good place to kind of let me know those things. And then one other thing I wanted to mention. So last time we had our test of Microsoft Teams, I think everybody was able to log in, excuse me. So I look back at the attendance list. I think Kylie was the only one who wasn't able to log in, but I did see that she could get on Teams. So I think most everybody can get in. I don't think I saw anybody who had problems logging into Teams. So we are going to use that starting on Monday. So what's going to happen is I'm going to create a static link for our Teams meeting that's just going to occur every Monday and Wednesday at the same time that we've been meeting on WebEx. So I'm going to put out that information to you, but I'm also going to make sure that I've got a little widget on our home screen when you log into Brightspace that has the meeting link in there. And you want to be careful to make sure that you're not clicking on the link for my office hours. So I'm just going to take a moment and just, I was going to say, once we kind of make sure that we've got this all set up and stuff like that. If we see, we might want to break some of these people up. But we'll talk. Well, I was going to say, you can figure that out for a minute, and then I think what I'll do is, like I said, at the end of the day, if I can see that there are things that are a little bit off, then I might just go ahead and change those things. Okay. So I just want to briefly show you like where to find the Microsoft Teams information, just briefly. So I'll come back to this, but for right now, I just want to show you where I'm going to put this little widget. Okay. So again, I'm on our homepage, excuse me, and then we've got the contact information card, and then you can see underneath that is a direct link to office hours. So I think I'm just going to make sure this is the key phrase here. So the clue is in the name, right? We got office hours, so we're not going to click on that to go into the class meeting. So what I will do is have a direct link to class meeting on Microsoft Teams. And that's just going to be one link. Okay. And it's going to be like, click to join the meeting. You can see here, I've got office hours, and those are listed so that way you know when I'm going to be in this meeting. And so if you're logging in before class, if you wanted to join my afternoon office hours, you would click that link. I think a few of you have tried this out and maybe realized you weren't sure if you wanted to click into that. And then the same is true for evening office hours. I've got office hours in the evening on Monday and Wednesday. So I just want to make sure that when we have meetings in the future that you're clicking on the right thing. But what I will do is continue to put the direct link to the meeting in announcements, so that way you can quickly reference that. If you're not sure, if you're looking at this, these widgets and you're not sure which one to click on, you can always go over here. Okay, so I think now I'm going to put the PowerPoint back up because I do want to make sure that I'm touching upon any aspects that you feel like you understood and then some areas where you might still be confused. So I'm going to keep this up as the PowerPoint here. So once you have put that information in the chat, and you feel good about, again, you know that you're working with the people that you've signed up to be on a team with, and that everybody is kind of in the configuration that I've specified on the assignment sheet, then you can log off of the meeting. Because I know you have to clean up the lab in a few minutes. This is like our 1-minute review of some things you understood, like you feel like you got some concepts and terms better after this lesson. And then if there are some areas where you're still confused, not as confident, you can put those details in the chat. So I'm going to stay on here until about 2 o'clock, and then after that point, we'll be able to kind of close things out and go into the weekend. And then I'll follow up with you later today. You saw that when we had our 1-minute review on week 2B, so that was Wednesday the 20th, that I posted some responses to those who had areas of confusion they wanted to mention in this 1-minute review. And so you saw that I actually addressed a lot of your questions in those, that I addressed that in the follow-up announcement that I posted after class. So, just continue to check our announcements to make sure you're up to date with what's happening. And then just kind of providing a closure to what we did today, and going into Monday's class. So I'm going to stay on here for about 2 minutes. Take as much time as you need to, just to kind of get your thoughts there in the chat before you log off. All right, I've seen some good feedback in the chat, so keep that coming if you're still on the meeting. And then again, I'll follow up with you later today with just some review of what we talked about, and then just remind you of a few things that are going to be essential for you to think about moving into the weekend. So then again, as I mentioned toward the beginning, you want to make sure that if you haven't done so already, to attempt those quizzes homework games for week 2 because they close tonight at 11. And then you should continue to check Brightspace for information and feedback regarding your writing team memo assignments, since I have about 12 people I need to enter comments for. So continue to check Brightspace. If you see those comments in there and you have questions, just, again, contact me directly. You can also stop by my office hours. All right, so it is 2 o'clock and you have to clean up the lab. So have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with for your Lego Masterpiece instructions.